Hey everyone, so I wanted to make a deep dive into the Dune deleted scenes, because there are a lot of scenes that you may not know about which were left out of the Dune movie. So let's get stuck right into this Dune deleted scenes deep dive. As we know, originally there were supposed to be different openings for the Dune movie. One of them was supposed to be Guy Selim Mohaim with a voiceover similar to the way Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring was introduced by Galadriel.
It began with the forging of the Great Rings.
It was supposed to go something like this. Once we let machines think for us, and those machines enslaved us, bringing an age of tyranny and war. The opening was to show a temple wall with an intricate mosaic and an ancient sanctuary with graceful arabesque calligraphy flowing across the surface. Then the mosaic designs become mechanic and characteristic, looming darkly over stylized human figures. The Reverend Mother continues, "When at last we threw them down, a new law was made. Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." The shapes dwindle to rubble, leaving a golden space in which human shapes re-emerge. Schools were founded to elevate human thought. The Mentats, masters of mathematics and logic. The Spacing Guild, whose navigators see into the future to leap between the stars. And the Bene Gesserit, whose supreme knowledge of the body and mind guides human affairs. We see the Mentats with halos of pure mathematics, the Guild navigators with great ships looming overhead, the Bene Gesserit in black-robed ranks of women led by matriarchs. All three rely on the spice, a narcotic that enhances psychic gifts in those who possess them. Without it, our civilization would collapse. Rays of orange emerge in the mosaic, transforming the people they touch, elevating Mentats, navigators, Bene Gesserit. We follow the rays back to a golden sphere, a desert planet. The spice has only one source, the desert planet we call Arrakis, known to its inhabitants as Dune. It's an opening reminiscent of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and Man of Steel. And an interesting piece of information about the Dune opening that we currently have in the film is that the opening is actually supposed to be a dream sequence, Paul's dream sequence. So it isn't just an opening of a film in the traditional sense. At one point there was even the idea of Jessica opening the movie, floating around.
Eric Roth had written a fantastic prologue that I deeply loved about the past of Lady Jessica, where we were seeing all her education, her skills coming out of the Bene Gesserit school, and I had to cut it out.
I had started, the first thing I wrote was I wanted to present the planet Dune as if we were looking at the Genesis from the Old Testament, like, and God created. And that's how I started the movie, the creation of a planet, which we think is Earth. And it turns out to be odd animals, and the water goes away, and it turns out to be Dune. And it's quite, I think, pretty spectacular. But then Denise said to me, "Well, that's really nice, and it's unbelievable what you've created, but now we can't afford the rest of the movie." So that was the end of that idea.
After the original prologue by Guy Selim Mohaim, the Reverend Mother, the scene with Duncan Idaho takes place where he drops from a stealth ship to Arrakis, which you can see in more detail in my other video. In the breakfast scene when Paul uses the voice on Jessica, when Jessica tells him,
Almost.
he was then supposed to say, "better than anyone else has ever done." And Jessica responds, "better than any man has ever done." Originally in the scene between Duncan Idaho and Paul Atreides, when Duncan tells him,
Hey you want some muscle?
I did?
No.
originally he makes an additional suggestion, try eating something. Moving on, when Paul tells him about his dreams, originally he was supposed to tell Duncan, "I saw the spice sands in the deep desert, the Fremen fighting for their lands." And this is where we were supposed to see the Harkonnen legions leaving Arrakis, the same scene we see in the final cut of Dune. Then Paul tells him about seeing Duncan dead, fallen in battle and clean shaven. And then Duncan says, "Whoa, okay, not gonna die. I shave for no man," pointing to his beard. But it seems that Jason Momoa will shave his beard for one man. In the scene between Leto and Paul in the cemetery, the Duke tells Paul, "I miss him," as he looks at his grandfather's gravestone, "that damned bull." Then he says, "I wish we could bring them all with us." Paul says, "You don't think we'll ever come back?" "I think Arrakis is far away." When Paul asks to join the advance team, he tells his father that great leaders are raised in the mud, not around tables. Before Duncan Idaho leaves to Arrakis, there's a celebration in the Caladan barracks at night, where all the men, including Duncan, are drinking in a party, drinks flowing, Gurney Halleck playing the balisette, and two men dancing on a table like Cossacks. So this seems to be the drunken Idaho scene. Even Leto joins them and says, "To Duncan's last night on Caladan," and the men cheer and toast. And this was in the shooting script, so it was probably filmed. And there's a scene between Jason Momoa and Josh Brolin. Duncan says, "Gurney Halleck, you look grouchy." "To Arrakis!" They toast, spilling beer, and Gurney says, "You think we've won something?" "Hey, we did. Our star is rising." So it is. The other great houses trust and admire us, and the Emperor is a jealous man, so maybe he's giving Arrakis to us. Or maybe he's giving us to Arrakis. Duncan looks at Gurney disturbed. "Did you tell the Duke?" He knows. He's right here. And then Leto gives a speech. The Emperor is no stranger to treachery, nor the Harkonnens. We have to be ready for anything, but this is our time. The Atreides never back down from a challenge, and when we prevail, it will mean a better life for the people of Arrakis. For all of us. Until then, we keep our spirits up for the men, Gurney nods, reluctantly. Then Leto says to Duncan, "You're a fine fighting man, but you look like a barbarian. Tonight that beard comes off." Duncan loses his grin, and then Gurney hands the Duke a trimmer, and he's held up by Gurney and Lanville, so Duncan is clearly drunk. In the scene with Pieter, Rabban and the Baron Harkonnen, when he says, "When is a gift not a gift?" he continues, "To break a virtuous man, give him a burden too heavy to bear. A lesser man would drop it, but a good man will carry it till it crushes him." In the scene between Paul and the Reverend Mother, when he passes the test, she was supposed to say, "No woman child ever withstood so much. I must have wanted you to fail." And the scene continues on. Originally, this scene was supposed to be much longer, which I've already covered. Paul tells the Reverend Mother more about his dreams. He tells her that he saw a girl in a cave on Arrakis. The Reverend Mother asks, "Have you dreamt of her before?" "Many times. I will know her," Paul replies. "Do you often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them?" Paul answers, "Yes. Someone dies in that cave." And this is likely referring to Jamis and the fight in the cave, which ultimately didn't happen in the movie. As the Reverend Mother makes way back to her ship, there is a longer conversation between her and Jessica. After she says, "You're lucky he didn't die in that room," she adds, "If he is the one, he has a long way to go." The Reverend Mother looks to Jessica and says, "Your son has depths, but it takes more than a touch of the sight. You've been training him in the way." "Yes," Jessica replies. "I'd have done the same, and the devil takes the rule. Carry on. Ignore the regular order of training. His safety requires the voice and deadlier weapons." These words of the Reverend Mother were hinted at in a trailer, which means it was likely filmed.
His safety requires deadlier weapons.
But this only appears in the Dune draft. The Dune draft and the Dune shooting script were both used to film the Dune movie. Jessica then says, "It meant so much to Leto. You're his concubine, not his wife. Your Duke wanted a son, and you in your pride thought you could produce the Kwisatz Haderach." "I sensed the possibility," Jessica defiantly replies. "Vanity! An Atreides daughter could not have wed to a Harkonnen son and united both houses. Instead, we shall have chaos and war. We could lose both bloodlines now. The Missionaria Protectiva has prepared the way. There is hope for the boy, but for the father?" The Reverend Mother says nothing more, but the words are a dagger in Jessica's heart. The scene between mother and son in the rain, after the Reverend Mother leaves, created a lot more tension between Paul and Jessica, and the scene would have gone something like this. "You just walked me into that room. Paul, I'm sorry. I could have died. It was the same for me a long time ago. I know it's a terrible ordeal, but there are reasons. What does it mean that I could be the one?" "You heard. She said I have more than one birthright. What does that mean? Bene Gesserit serve as powerful partners to the great houses, but there's more to it. You steer the politics of the Imperium from the shadows, I know. The Bene Gesserit provide concubines to the noble born, leaving them free to marry for political advantage. We're companions, bodyguards, counselors. We bear extraordinary children. We say we exist to serve, but that's not all we do. You control the bloodlines of the great houses. You're breeding them and placing members of our sisterhood beside them to guide them toward peace, enlightenment. Do you love my father?" "Yes." "Do you love me?" "Oh, Paul." And that ends the scene. It would have been interesting if they included this because Paul is questioning his mother's love based on her allowing him to be tested by the box, which could have led to his death, which seems appropriate and it seems fair. A completely valid question given the circumstances for a 15-year-old. If you want to see more of the deleted scenes in detail, check out my Dune Extended Edition video and look out for the Dune Deleted Scenes Deep Dive Part 2.